Trump gets a new press secretary?
And do the women of The View like her?
Let's talk about it, y'all.
Middle America!
Oh!
And you ain't black.
I don't know what I said.
The first time ever any...
What are you people? We're Americans.
We are Americans in...
Escape in 2025. This White House
Wonderful.
believes strongly in the First Amendment.
Wonderful.
So it's why our team will work diligently to restore the press passes of the 440 journalists whose passes were wrongly revoked by the previous administration. We're also opening up this briefing room to new media voices who produce news-related content and whose outlet is not already represented by one of the seats in this room. We welcome independent journalists, podcasters, social media influencers, and content creators to apply for credentials to cover this White House. This seat in the front of the room, which is usually occupied by the press secretary's staff, will be called the new media seat. My team will review the applications and the credentials to new media applicants who meet our criteria and pass.
We've got it now. We've got it now. Here we go. Here we go, guys. Here we go. It was a bumpy. It was a bumpy start.
But we've taken off now.
And you got this cord over here. This is very, very professional. Very, very professional. All right, guys.
If we trade headphones, it won't be like that.
So, as you know, this is Middle America with Vin and Sawyer, where we are not left wing, we are not right wing, we are just right.
We all
indeed. We all
Americans indeed.
Okay, now, Mr. Trump has a new press secretary, and as we would expect from Mr. Trump, because he's a virulent misogynist, he hired a woman. Now, why this misogynist named Donald Trump keeps hiring women in very consequential spaces is beyond me. But here we go.
Competent women.
Now, well, that's what Mark Cuban said. Mark Cuban said that Trump only surrounds himself with unqualified, dumb women. That's what Mark Cuban said. Shout out to Mark Cuban.
Okay.
Who was trying to tell us all to vote for Kamala Harris. What do they have to do with anything? Shout out to the big homie Larry Santamon.
Hello.
Okay, so the press secretary is basically the if you guys know anything about the Russian world, it's basically Pravda. Okay? It's basically the Ministry of Truth. And their job is to put the lipstick on the pig of whatever the president does. We suffered through. I gotta tell you, Jean-Pierre, the black lady, whatever her name was, she was intolerable to me. I could barely stand her. I could barely stand what she was. And it had nothing to do with like her supporting Biden. It was just that she didn't seem very competent. Okay, I'll just say it that way.
Okay.
But she checked all the boxes for her. She was gay. She was an immigrant. She's very dark. You know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
So like if you're one of these people, like she was like the Holy Grail, but her skill set, not so much. Although I will have to say, I mean, how would you like being Joe Biden's press secretary? I mean, you know what I'm saying? They didn't really give her a lot to work with.
A little bit of a hard job.
You know what I'm saying? It's not like, you know, it's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough to have to run interference for a guy like Joe Biden, I would presume. But anyway, I wasn't really a fan of Miss Jean-Pierre. But good for her, you know what I'm saying? I'm sure she's going to parlay this into an MSNBC gig at some point here, which is what happened last time, literally. Jen Psaki. I think Jen Psaki was Biden's press secretary for like half of his term, and then she went and got that MSNBC deal. So now she's on MSNBC, and now it's, you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So that's who we're rocking and rolling with. Vin straight up called her a DEI hire. Yeah, I believe that she and Vice President Kamala Harris were both DEI hires. And I think time will bear that out. Okay, Joe Biden is a legend. That's true. I'm sure he's a legend in Ukraine. He must be a legend in China as well. Nobody's going to take that away from Mr. Biden. But here we go, guys. Here we go. Here is introducing Miss Leavitt, Mr. Trump's press secretary. Let's see how she does on day one, huh?
It's essential to our team that we share President Trump's message everywhere and adapt this White House to the new media landscape in 2025. This White House believes strongly in the First Amendment, so it's why our team will work diligently to restore the press passes of the 440 journalists whose passes were wrongly revoked by the previous administration.
You know what's funny?
Crazy. What?
When Trump revoked, I think it was Jim Acosta's badge. He revoked it because Jim Acosta wasn't being nice to him. CNN and MSNBC ran this giant story about Trump and fascism and Hitler, and this is what happens when you let, fascists in power. Now he doesn't want to deal with any contrary media. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was actually pretty valid. We ran 2 stories on it. And then now I find out that Biden has banned 400 plus people. And
why have we never heard about it?
We're just now hearing about it?
Yeah, I think that's crazy. 400 something. How did those people's voices not get out there?
I mean,
they're media people, and they weren't able to tell all of us.
I mean, when you're in okay, so you've got the war in Ukraine, you got the war in, you got the genocide over there in Israel, you got the horrible economy. You see what I'm saying? So I can understand how they would say there are way more important things to report on than me banning a person. But 400? I don't know what the number is, okay?
I disagree with you. I mean, that's literally their job.
What do you mean?
They're the media people, and the media people are getting 400 and something are being sent away, dismissed by Joe Biden. So you'd think that the media people would say, you know what? He's dismissing us. We should speak on this. It's important.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like, it's in our best interest to let the people know.
Well, back in the day, there was a real fraternal understanding of the media. The media is supposed to have an us against them mentality relative to the government.
Yeah.
That's the entire point. So there's supposed to be, by definition, some animosity there. But as we have seen, and this happens on Fox News, there's no animosity to Trump. Tucker had real issues with Trump that were policy issues with Trump, but obviously, as being on Fox News, he was not allowed to really fully articulate and express that. I just thought it was crazy that 400 people got dismissed.
Yeah.
And I didn't hear about it at all. And remember this story, because I'm sure Trump is going to try to, revoke somebody else's badge, and people are going to invoke, the cadaver of Adolf Hitler to try to provide some context for what Trump is doing. Sometimes, guys, it's not that deep.
Yep.
Sometimes it's just a matter of, I don't like this guy, whatever. But anyway, 400 people got revoked, so we continue. Holy smoke.
We're also opening up this briefing room to new media voices who produce news-related content and whose outlet is not already represented by one of the seats in this room. We welcome independent journalists, podcasters, social media influencers, and content creators to apply for credentials to cover this White House. This seat in the front of the room, which is usually occupied by the press secretary's staff, will be called the new media seat. My team will review the applications and give credentials to new media applicants who meet our criteria and pass United States Secret Service requirements to enter the White House complex.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about more liberal.
Wow.
I am continually blown away by how much Trump has adapted to technology, the revolution.
Yeah. I
I am amazed that the stodgy Republican, backwoods, ignorant, Trump's a moron, Elon's a moron, everybody we don't like is a moron, and yet, this is a really populist thing to do. This is a really, we take regular people seriously thing to do.
Yeah.
Now, granted, they're going to curate who gets access, but at least the Trump organization is recognizing that is a group that needs to be placated. the standard CNN response, and I'm gonna say by extension neoliberal response, is to decry the death of expertise. That's like a big thing now. Like, no, people are no longer convinced by experts. They trust more in a YouTuber than they would in, you know, a doctor over something about whether or not something is carcinogenic or something like that. Like, it's a very, very strange time to live in. And CNN, for the most part, their kind of conviction has always been, I remember Brian Stelter, he's like, we have an HR department, we have desks and all this other stuff. Like, basically, we're legitimate. We're not some backwoods YouTubers over there. And look, I get it. But these people are out here, and you could tell they're trying to set this up for a long time. They understand that they were already light years ahead of the left relative to talk radio, relative to the podcast. You know,
that's why they're saying we need a Joe Rogan.
Correct, Sadakta. They've been decrying this so-called echo chamber, right? And now what Trump has done is he said, oh, well, since there's a right-wing echo chamber,
let's utilize
in the podcast space. Let's get 2 or 3 people in there a week, and they're most likely gonna be friendly to Trump. And just by the bait, look, if you're in the press, you're in the Wall Street Journal and all the rest of it, you getting a press pass means nothing to you. Like, you personally, it doesn't mean anything, and it doesn't mean anything to us either. But a YouTuber getting that kind of access. And then being there to represent regular people.
Yeah. That's huge.
That immediately is going to engender some loyalty, because I would not be here were it not for you.
Yep.
Whereas you can't say that with the Wall Street Journal. You can't say that with the New York Times.
Exactly.
Like, you can't say that with ABC, NBC, MSNBC. But you're going to have an entire cadre of people who are only going to be there because Trump said your opinion is valuable. And even if you hate Trump, you being there decries your own argument.
Yeah.
If you hate Trump and you call him a Nazi, you call him a fascist, when has Adolf Hitler invited a private citizen from the resistance to come? So either way, he's going to win. Because if they select a left-wing person or a person that hates Trump, they could say whatever they want, but at the end of it, everybody's going to say, yeah, but he gave you a press pass. Like, you're over there. Like, he can't be that bad. He can't be that much of a fascist. He can't be Hitler. If he's letting regular Joe have a seat at the table.
I mean, that's true. That's true, though. He can't be, like, you can't call him Hitler. Didn't Hitler shut down all of the, they didn't even have any.
Well, there is currently a leader who has avowed Nazis, like literal avowed Nazis, in very important positions. There is a leader that has disempowered and disassembled non-war anti-Nazi elements in his government. There is a person who nationalized the media, so private media and free speech is non-existent. There is a leader that has done that. There's even a leader that has supported the fomentation of religious persecution. Did you know that?
No.
That leader his last name is called Zelensky. Everything I just described is what Zelensky has done. He has unseated peacenik groups that are against the Nazi shit that they're doing over there. He has nationalized the media, so private media is illegal over there. He has made Russian Orthodoxy basically, you're going to struggle if you're part of the Russian Orthodox Church on that side of the border, etc., etc., etc.
Wow.
And we know the Azov Battalion, the Red Circle, all the rest of these guys are all like literal Nazis who literally have Nazi blood in their veins. So that is true. Our current president, I don't believe, is as bad as Mr. Zelensky. I do think that he's gonna, abuse his authority like everybody else does when they get authority. But we can't say that he's as bad as Zelensky. We can't call him a dictator.
No.
We can't call him a dictator or a fascist at the level of a guy like Zelensky.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, exactly. Listen, does anybody else think that this picture looks like the Last Supper? That picture that people have up for the Last Supper, the way their table is, and which one's Judas?
Here's Danny Trujillo. Trump put Elon in his cabinet, knowing Elon churns right-wing propaganda on Twitter X, while also suppressing free speech on the app and throttling political ops, in his opinion. Well, I've heard that. I've seen that demonstrated with the rulership group of Twitter prior to the takeover. But it seems to me that the last stat that I looked at is a dead split of 50-50 between right-wing bias versus left-wing bias on Twitter. I think it's very telling. I think it's extremely telling that the people that are angry at Mr. Musk are angry at him because he stopped throttling right-wing sites. I think that's very, very telling.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing. A bunch of neoliberals and leftists left Twitter as soon as Elon bought it. And then after Trump got elected, a bunch of them also left Twitter to go to Blue Sky. Now look, if you have the disposition to say, I hate Twitter, I'm going to Blue Sky, you're 99% more likely to be a leftist. Well, guess what? If all these prominent leftists are leaving the platform,
guess what will happen?
What will happen, just mathematically speaking? Right? So it's one or the other, man. You got. I keep hearing about how Elon was using X to pump out misinformation and disinformation, but they don't give examples. So if one of you who hate Elon for taking over Twitter, if you guys could just give us, I'm being serious, like give us real examples of Elon pumping out propaganda, that would be great.
Yeah.
Do you think Zelensky is worse than Trump? Zelensky is just a con artist or worse? Well, if I would have described the things that Trump did in his first presidency, and then I were to describe what Zelensky did in his term of office, especially right now, there is no question that Zelensky is worse than Trump. There is no question that he is way more fascistic than Trump. I repeat, Dwayne, he made other political parties illegal. Illegal.
I mean,
he nationalized the media. I don't know what else to say. I don't know what else to say.
And
I'm not talking about the propaganda and the whatever. I'm talking about what are the actual policies that this man has enacted. Okay? That's what I'm looking at. I'm sorry, go ahead. What were you saying?
Zelensky went and confronted those Nazis that were under his leadership. And
They laughed at him.
They laughed at him.
They laughed in his face. Yeah, shout out to Zelensky.
So he's not even...
He's not fit to lead.
You can't compare this. You can't compare this.
Yeah, he should have... Anyway, we continue.
Tears from the cackling hands on The View who have been boohoo-whining and crying about Trump since the election. I mean, before the election, they were boohoo-whining and crying. They've been boohoo-whining and crying for the last 8 years straight. You would think these people would get tired of this, but apparently they don't. So with that being said, we got to talk about Miss Karoline Leavitt, who, as we discussed yesterday, in her first press briefing, she opened access to new media, including podcasters and influencers, to join the press room. She also reinstated press passes that were wrongfully revoked by the Biden administration, aka journalists and media outlets that the Democrats didn't agree with, right? That they could say, oh, well, these people are far right. They're fringe. Okay. Yeah, those press passes got restored. Now, The View and the mainstream liberal media, they're boohoo-whining and crying about it, right? They're complaining because you have others who are being allowed in the press room, and the times have changed, okay? Most people do not consume their news via traditional media anymore. A lot of people are getting their news from social media. They're getting their news from podcasters, so-called influencers, commentators, independent journalists. People are moving on, okay? The media landscape is evolving, and the White House is updating their press room to reflect the evolution of the media. Now,
Danny Trujillo is so interesting to me. One example is Elon having killed a funding bill from his X posts. But imagine the uproar if Biden put the... Elon didn't kill any bill. He gave an opinion. You guys keep saying that he used X to foment disinformation and misinformation. That's what I'm looking for. Him giving an opinion on what should happen, he's allowed to do that. But what you guys are talking about is this concerted disinformation and misinformation campaign. Where is that? Give me an example of that. Imagine the uproar if Biden put the owner of a major social media app. How would the right react? My brother, you guys had it. It was called Twitter. It was called Facebook. Mm-hmm. It was called YouTube. Mm-hmm. It was called, we're going to take a legitimate Biden laptop story, and then we're going to join in with the NatSec security state / intelligence apparatus, and we're going to say anybody that shares this true story during an election about Hunter Biden's laptop, we are going to take away their ability to speak even in private messages. They did that. So tell me what you're talking about, Trujillo. I need to know. When you say, imagine if they were in the Democrats' spot. Did you not read the Twitter files? What are we talking about here? We continue. Holy smokes.
You would think that the left would be praising this, because this, by definition, is diversity and inclusion. Yep. This is the type of diversity and inclusion
100%
that you actually should strive
100%.
for, which is ideological diversity, in the sense that, okay, you have people from across the board in the press room, and not just a bunch of different colored faces that all think the same, right? That all align with the Democrat Party, okay? So, you know,
you guys is crazy when I'm not a Democrat or supporter of Biden and have been very critical of that party. That's okay, Danny. Just answer the question. Just answer the question. That's all I'm asking you to do. I asked you for specific instances of mis and disinformation from Elon Musk, and you still haven't provided yet. That's all I need. Show me where the mis and disinformation was on X after Elon took over.
The opposition to this, again, it really shows you how the left feels about so-called diversity and inclusion. What they actually really mean is just a diversity of faces, but not a diversity of ideology. What you have here for the White House is a diversity of ideology in the press room, and they're boo-hoo-whine and crying about it. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this.
Questions, which is why I was leading us in this direction. Yeah, I would like this young lady this is her first job. I would like her to do a little homework.
Wow. Wow, incredible. Incredible. Whoopi is asking Miss Caroline Leavitt to do a little bit of homework when she clearly hasn't done her homework, because she claims that this is the press secretary's first job, when that's clearly not the case. She was the press secretary for the Trump campaign, okay? So she had been speaking on behalf of the Trump campaign for months leading up to getting this job.
She's 27.
She also worked for Elise Stefanik and other roles as well, too. I mean, she's more than qualified for the role. But for whatever reason, Whoopi didn't know that, because she didn't do her research, while at the same time trying to tell other people to do their research. The irony is unbelievable.
Because she said something yesterday that really pissed me off. And that was, she said, there will be no wokeness here. Oh, yeah. Let me explain something to you. Because without that wokeness, you might not have that job. Yeah. Because women were not invited to that table. Mm-hmm. Women were not invited to many tables in this nation. The reason we fought and busted our behinds to make sure that you didn't have to worry about this. And now to hear you talk about it, and to hear anybody talk about the wokeness was put in place for a reason. Because black people couldn't get into colleges. Because women could not get into the colleges they wanted to go to. This is all women. Yeah. See, this is not black, Asian women. This is all women. Women were not invited to this party. It was a man's world, and we busted our asses to make sure that this was a person's world. So please stop using that phrase and talking.
Okay, I mean, I'll give her 50% of that. I do think it's important to realize that the people who are anti woke and make a big deal out of de-wokalizing America. If you put them in a time machine and sent them 50 years ago, I do not think they'd be pro women's rights.
I'll text you.
I just think, you know what I'm saying? Like, we gotta add some levity here. Like, the people who are complaining about woke this, woke that, woke this, woke that, were also the same people that were saying, I don't know if that 19th Amendment thing that gave women the right to vote was a really good development in our country. So, pump your brakes. She is right. Any woman or black person, including this guy on the show, you better at some level thank your lucky stars for quote unquote wokeness, because I promise you, if Dr. King was around today, if Malcolm was around today, they would be public enemy number one as woke from the exact same people who are trying to cure you of your wokeness. That's a fact. So just chill out. We don't have to like swing the pendulum. I think there is some wisdom here.
Yeah.
Because as I said, you literally had conversations on Twitter where you had women, grown women, talking about how maybe women having the right to vote was a mistake, blah, 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 because everybody was convinced that women were going to completely dominate the electoral map because of the whole abortion thing. Okay? So when right-wingers were afraid that women were going to show up and vote en masse, then they opened up the 19th Amendment conversation. Okay? So the women of The View are generally wrong, in my view, but I do think that the wokeness, quote unquote, was there for a reason, and you just have to watch these people. All you have to do is watch James Lindsay. I mean, there's people that I love. There's people in this room who I know for a fact would call Malcolm and Martin woke, among all the other shit if we put them in a time machine. So like, don't get it twisted.
Yeah.
Because you don't understand what you're saying. You're saying about yourself that, you know, hey, that's a terrible thing to be. It's not a terrible thing to be. That's why we fought. That's what we were fighting for, so that you could stand in that podium, so that Catherine Jean-Pierre could stand at that podium. So women of all kinds of colors and...
Yeah, but she was trash, though. She didn't do a very good job. See, this is the thing that gets me about Democrats and their diversity hires, is that they never choose the most competent person to be their diversity hire. The George Floyd uprising was happening. Black people were emotional about what happened to George Floyd. So Biden says, it's their turn. I'm going to pick a black person. You're going to be happy with it. Did he choose Stacey Abrams? Stacey Abrams, who basically single-handedly did him Georgia. Did he choose her? Nope. He chose Kamala. Why choose her? Because Kamala had already demonstrated what she was willing to do, specifically to black people, specifically to women, in order to get that spot. And until neoliberal leftists deal with that on the racial side, you guys are always going to have a major blind spot. And it's one of the reasons why the Latinos are like, man, screw this. And I promise you, if you look at the numbers, if you look at the demos of the black vote, you watch what's going to happen with the black vote, especially in 2 years when Democrats start trying to appeal to Latinos because of what Latino men did this time around. People are going to start figuring it out. We continue.
What's up, Jet?
Ilks, wherever they came from, whatever their belief system was, they had the opportunity to bust down that door.
And by the way, I think she's probably been put in there because, according to Donald Trump, she's a 10. You know that's what it is.
I want to be clear.
Oh, she's put in there because she's a 10.
According to Donald Trump.
That's right. That's like I got my first promotion in Maine, and the white lady said, affirmative action, blah, 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 blah. Because she had to ask a 19-year-old. Yeah, I ain't going to finish that sentence. God forgive me. But there it is. There it is again. There it is again. The only reason you're there is because you're pretty. That's it. That's it.
Do you know any of her qualifications?
I have no idea who this girl is. I don't know who she is. I do know about Trump though. He fired his male head of advisor during the 2016 elections. He fired that guy midstream and hired a woman, Kellyanne Conway, and he listened to whatever she told him to do. He's got a chief of staff who's a female who's overseeing all this stuff. So that lady's not very attractive. Kellyanne Conway was like 9,000 years old. She's obviously not very attractive. And Trump selected her. Maybe it's something as basic as she knows how to speak and she can think quickly on her feet and she's decisive and she's strong-willed. Now, if she is attractive, great. Even better. What's wrong with that?
I mean, what? Obviously, we all know that the more attractive people, they're going to get more views. So if you're going to get a press secretary,
right,
she's for the press.
Right, and
So
studies have shown this. Men are less likely to disagree with a girl they believe is pretty. It's just true.
I believe it.
It's just true. So I'm not going to say that none of it factored into the decision, but for Trump, it's, can this person execute what I want them to execute? I really believe that. And he doesn't care. Right, black, red, yellow, straight, gay, trans. He doesn't care. Can you get me to where I want to go?
Yeah.
She could say that. She could say that if she wants. You know, she could say that if she wants. It's just very fascinating to me how, if this was, let's say, the Tucker Carlson show, and Tucker Carlson said that Jean-Pierre, whatever her name was, if he said, oh, well, we all know why she's there. It's because, you know, she's pretty and Biden has, you know how Biden is with pretty women. I mean, you see what he did to Tara Reid, right? Like, everybody would be saying, that's so misogynistic, that's crazy, blah, 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 blah. And yet this girl, instead of saying, holy shit, 27 years old, and you've angled yourself into this place of power, and people are going to be hearing more from you than from the president. That's the entire reason she has a job. Instead of celebrating that and spiking the football, it comes back to, oh, it's just because you're a pretty face. Which tells me, this is one of the reasons why I don't freak out about the so-called racism and sexism on the right. Because the racists and sexists on the right are self-conscious, racist, and sexist. They know what they are. The left, or the View, whatever they represent, are just as horrible, as racist, as sexist, but they pretend that they're not, and then they judge other people who are. And that's one of the things that I cannot deal with these people. It's the most annoying thing ever. Nah, don't worry about it.
Wow, so disrespectful. You know, I hate when people accusing others of not knowing what they're talking about, which is exactly what's going on here with Whoopi. Okay, Miss Caroline Leavitt did not get the job because she's a woman. She didn't get the job because she's a woman. She got the job because she earned it. Okay, she showed on the campaign trail that she was a good spokesperson for the campaign. Okay, the way that she ran the campaign in regards to the press and the media was good. She did a damn good job. I mean, she got kicked off of CNN multiple times, okay, which tells you that she's amazing at her job. If you're getting kicked off of CNN, you're doing a damn good job, right? You're doing an amazing job, because that means you're spitting truths that are so brutal and so honest that they can't air it, right? They can't air it on CNN. It doesn't fit the narrative. They got to kick you off, which happened to her multiple times, by the way. So with that being said, what Whoopi doesn't understand is that when she talks about wokeness, what she talks about is the cultural Marxist ideology that replaces economic class conflict with identity-based class conflict, in the sense that if you are not a straight white male Christian, then you somehow are a victim, right, in some way, okay? You have a disadvantage in society if you're not a straight white Christian man, okay? We're not gonna be boohoo-whining and crying victimhood and talking about race and sex and gender identity. No, we're gonna focus on what we need to focus on, which is getting the job done, right? And informing the American people, which is the exact opposite of what the Biden administration was focused on, which was wokeness, which is why cringe Jean-Pierre was hired in the first place. And look what we got as a result. The worst White House press secretary in the history of this country, and it's not even close. I guarantee you, if you ask any of these liberal reporters off the record, who is the worst White House press secretary in history, they'll say cringe Jean-Pierre. There's no...
I called her cringe. Her name is Corinne. Then he called her cringe. I mean, I got to agree. But again, I don't know how bad this woman was. And God, please forgive me. But look what she had to work with. Like, no disrespect, but look what she had to work with.
Yeah, she kept getting put in a lot of awkward situations.
I mean, I don't...
there were so many times where I was like, I wonder what she's going to say.
I think that's why Jen Psaki quit. I think there were just one too many situations, and she was like, yeah, I can't do this. I mean, she's going to get... Corinne got blamed for a lot of it, but what can we do? We continue.
My mind, at the very least, 80% of them would say that if they're being honest, okay? And the other 20% who wouldn't say it, believe it, they just don't have the cojones to say it even off the record. So Caroline Leavitt is not in her position because of wokeness. She's in her position because she's the best person for the job, and that's why she was hired. At no point has she ever mentioned being a woman. Has she talked about her race?
Yeah, but literally the reason that when we're talking woke, we're saying like what Whoopi was saying. Like we've got women weren't allowed to be in these situations.
Yeah.
And because times changed, that's part of wokeness. That's why she's able to be in that position. Yeah. So when she goes out there saying we're getting rid of wokeness, there's going to be no wokeness here. It's like, well, that's not very self-aware because you are there as a result of wokeness. So he's saying, well, she's not a He's saying she only got there due to her merit. But she couldn't have only gotten there due to her merit because if there had been no wokeness, right, she would have never got there. But what they're saying is, okay, you guys can vote, everything's equal now, so now it's just may the best man or woman win. That's their ideology. Yes, but she's going out there saying we're not going to have any more wokeness. I don't like some of the stuff that's connected to wokeness. It depends on how they define the term. What do you mean? It depends on how they define the term. Who's they? Wokeness. Her? Her, yeah. I mean, it's really in the eye of the beholder. Well, yeah, obviously she's not considering the job that she has wokeness. Right. And that's why I said if you put them in a time machine, all the people on especially the dudes on the Republican side would be saying that a woman having the right to vote, they'd call all that wokeness. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. He's saying, no, it has nothing to do with wokeness. Well, yeah, he's saying that. It doesn't have nothing to do with wokeness. Well, yeah, and look, he lives in a world where everybody just gets to where they get because of merit. That's it. That's what he thinks. Okay, all right. And that's what a lot of people tell themselves about America, that everybody's starting at the same spot. Mm-hmm. It's just some people just work harder and other people are just lazy. Mm-hmm. Or some people got housing grants off of the taxes of other people, while other people were shut out of those same housing grants, which is, as we know, the number one way to generate wealth in America. It always has been. It's land ownership and home ownership. So I get what you're saying, but what's happening is the Republicans have successfully called any sort of progressive initiative woke. Mm-hmm. And it functions to shut down the minds of thinking people in the same way that CRT functioned to shut down the mind of thinking people. Yeah. And so anytime you hear the term woke, it's any sort of progressive agenda. And the term is so loosely defined that they all define it differently, but it's always stuff they disagree with. See what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Her sex, her religion, she hasn't talked about any of those things. Only thing she's done is just do her job. Which, again, is the exact opposite of Cringe Jean-Pierre. And by the way, with Miss Caroline Leavitt being a woman and the youngest White House press secretary ever, if she was a Democrat, okay, if she was working for the Biden administration, these cackling hands would be praising her, right? They would have so much to say about, isn't this a great example of what women can achieve, right? Young women who are looking to grow their professional careers. Isn't she a great example to emulate as a working woman and what you can do even at a young age, right? That's what they would be saying, because that's what they did with Cringe Jean-Pierre, even though she was terrible, okay? Black, lesbian, woman, all the infinity stones of wokeness. Oh, all the she's such a great example, right? She's breaking the glass ceiling, even though she was absolutely terrible at her job. So, these are not serious people. And at this point, and it's been like this for a long time, that outrage is just comedy to me. It's just hilarious to watch these people rage and just show their sheer and utter hypocrisy.
It's not her first job. It was her first press briefing. She worked in the previous Trump administration.
What
as
everyone
Capitol
is saying,
Hill
this is the
secretary,
first
though. Which I
time
think
that
is an
she's been
accomplishment.
she may be, but my point is that job would not maybe have been open to her.
No, I understand. I just wanted
without
to clarify that.
Yeah.
But on the issue of the new media, because I actually think this is kind of brilliant, and I think future Democratic White Houses should do the same thing. We're realizing this election, how people consume media has drastically changed. This was the Joe Rogan, Theo Vaughn, Alex Cooper election. It wasn't mainstream.
I cannot believe that the Democratic Party still does not have this figured out. They still don't get it. It's mind-boggling to me that a guy like Trump's in his 80s, isn't he? How are you getting out-popularized and out-technologized?
Want me to fix it?
No. How are you getting out-technologized by these people? I thought Republicans were just, backwoods, ignorant. How in the world did they do this before the left figured it out how to do that? I was thinking to myself, like, he should do the State of the Union on, like, the Joe Rogan show.
Oh, yeah.
He should say, all you network people, nah, if you guys want to watch the State of the Union, go to YouTube.
Yep.
You know what would happen? YouTube would immediately start pumping out a whole bunch of Trump stuff. Mm-hmm. Are you kidding me? Because people don't understand this. YouTube, and it's oddly they figured out how to do it. YouTube's main goal was to supplant network TV. That was their entire goal. And that's why you have YouTube. You can buy an NFL pass on YouTube, right? Where you can watch all the NFL games for free, whatever. Well, not for free, obviously, you get to buy the pass. So they've been trying to overtake legacy media. And originally the model was a PewDiePie type guy, maybe even a Mr. Beast type guy. What we didn't think about was the news. And so now what's happened is they did succeed in their goal via the news. And that's where all the people are talking. That's where all the money is. And that's why Zuckerberg was like, okay, we're pulling back on the fact checker stuff, yada, yada, yada. As someone who was fact checked by Facebook, I can tell you definitively on my firstborn, it was completely and totally biased, completely and totally designed to exalt one kind of article over against the other one. We did tests on it. It was objectively proven. It's a fact. I didn't need to see the Twitter files or the Facebook files. I
experienced it.
I ran it.
Yeah.
So I saw what happened.
Yeah.
But anyway, we continue.
Old school media that was driving people's interest in what they were following and the stories they were. And I think this is an acknowledgement that Trump realizes this. This is a person who made his career in television.
What's to prevent those media influences from being only on his side?
Well, there will be Parsons, but I think it was promising that they brought in.
When have you guys ever cared about?
This is the thing that gets me about these neo-libs, man. They truly don't get it. Because you guys have
been balanced.
Like you've been balanced? Like Rachel Maddow was balanced for 4 years of Russiagate? What are we talking about here? 4 years of Russiagate we had. 4 years.
Ladies.
Come on.
And it's amazing because she literally just got done pointing out that lady is saying, hey, there's no wokeness here, but it was wokeness that got her there.
Right.
And now here she is saying, oh, they're going to go put out one side when that's what you're doing.
That's what you've been doing the entire time. What are we talking about? They wouldn't even let... I was going through this because Def Man was there. DJ was there. Where he'd be like, yo, I'm not as up on this vaccine thing like you are. I was like, well, what's your... He's like, well, what about this guy and this guy? I think it's like Dr. Longwood or something like that. And I'm like, all right, well, I mean... He's some crack guy from YouTube. He's like, dude, this is the guy that invented the mRNA vaccine or whatever. And so I'm like, all right, cool. I'm looking into what he's saying. I sat down. He did like a 3-hour interview. We actually listened to it together one time on one of our trips. And I was like, I don't know. The guy sounds... Remember we were in the car? We were like, I don't know. The guy sounds like he knows what he's talking about.
A little, very vague.
But then they lambasted the guy. Oh, he's crazy, blah, blah, blah. Turns out, he was completely right.
Oh, is he the one that was talking about like the herd mentality. And
Well,
stuff.
herd immunity among other herd immunity among other
the
things.
Same thing, yeah.
Yeah, like, but he also he didn't say COVID didn't exist. What he said was the vaccine is not a therapeutic, and then he went into the definition of what that was, and then he said like we actually need to look
Dr.
at
Robert Malone.
Yeah, Dr. Malone. Yeah, he's like we need to, Twitter bounced him, LinkedIn bounced him, and he asked one of the guys, "Do you even have the education to even contest what I'm saying?"
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
you don't even have the education to contest what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So what are you talking about, lady? Like that's all. How were the American?
It just happened again. Another collision. So,
okay. How were the American people duped into supporting the Iraq War?
Mm-hmm.
How'd that happen? It's because legacy media went and told everybody the same story. You would not have been able to foment an Iraq today. You wouldn't be able to do it. You would not be able to do it. There's too many Applejacks, citizen journalists, people with cell phones, weirdos with YouTube channels. You would not be able to get the entire country marching in the direction of massacring 1 million Iraqis, spending $8 trillion on bullshit, so that Halliburton and the rest of them boys could get mega rich while we're out here burying people, and then our brothers over there in Iraq and Afghanistan are burying people. That's the problem. That's the problem they have with new media, is that all of their agendas, Trump could not have won the presidency in 16 or this year with legacy media being what it is. It had to come from social media. And he clearly understood that.
Yep.
And he understood that before people on the blue side did, which is mind-boggling to me. Especially after this election, where in Pennsylvania, literally you had Kamala knocking on doors herself. People were saying like every door got hit 2 or 3 times. Like you couldn't go anywhere and not see a Kamala Street Team person. Trump had next to nobody there, and he destroyed her in Pennsylvania. Right from there, you got to say, okay, this digital shit, this is where everybody's going. We got to go. No. Still with the same old weirdos on CNN crying about Elon and his hand gestures and whatever. Go ahead.
No, I'm just, over time, stuff changes. That was the only way. That was the best way to communicate something, going knocking door to door. That is not how people communicate anymore. People don't want somebody else randomly knocking on their door. People are about social media. And so you have to get in those platforms, like Trump did with Joe Rogan. Like, that's the way to do it. You have to get into the big platforms. This is brilliant what he's going to be doing with the media.
It's crazy.
And getting those smaller YouTube channels in there.
It's crazy. It's usually
because, like you said, they're probably going to pick some channels too that are kind of like lean more toward the left.
Yeah.
But then it's going to make them lean toward the right because Trump is giving them this this opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, the minute you complain about it from the left, if Hassan gets a pass or something like that,
you can't call him a Nazi if he's letting you go right into the White House. With a press pass.
A lot of these people, their audiences probably won't even let them go. Hassan tried to do a Hogwarts Legacy play along, and then he was going to give all the money to an LGBT group or something like that, because you remember the whole.
Oh, I know, but they don't like that. You can't do that.
They bullied him, so he stopped doing it.
Yeah.
Bernie had an endorsement from Joe Rogan, and the leftists, not the blue people, the leftists made Bernie renounce it. So it's crazy to me. And Thea, I'm not a liberal, but I definitely support Palestinian children over Israeli terrorists. I just saw a video where the IDF bravely sniped an unarmed, unaccompanied 16-year-old in the back and watched him cry out for his mother as he blacked out and died. In the back. So, yeah, there's that. We continue.
Axios, which is mainstream, but then they brought in Breitbart, which is a right-wing outlet. And so some of the outlets that had their passes revoked when Biden came in were right-of-center outlets. I don't have a problem with partisan outlets being there as long as it's representative of both sides and you have non-biased traditional media there as well and that it's fact-driven how they cover it.
The problem that I have with it, though, is, she's saying that these people that are going to apply.
Who are these non-biased media? What media is non-biased?
It's insane. It's insane.
But she's trying to say they're in that, like, CNN and Fox, or who? Who are these non-biased?
I guess they're saying that CNN is an unbiased media source? What? CNN? But it'd be the same thing if Fox News tried to say they were unbiased.
Exactly.
But
these are all, like, the main... Like, The View is not like a YouTube channel. So
no, they're all legacy. Yeah,
they're all in the same basket of people, and they're like, they're going to make sure they have us, the non-biased people.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a conversation happening right now in our chat about Tara Reid, and it's very fascinating to watch. Very fascinating, because the minute any female says anything about Trump doing something with them, they believe it immediately. But Tara Reid, they're picking this girl apart still. And I think a lot of it has to do is they want to believe that they're morally better than everybody. Like, I recognize this with evangelicalism, it's where we grew up, is you want to believe you're better than everybody. And so it's like, you don't want to say, we did exactly with Tara Reid what the right-wingers did with Kavanaugh. They don't want to do that. It's the same reason why they're unhappy about Trump getting the Palestinian deal done. Because they were judging everybody the whole time. You're supporting a fascist. You're supporting a genocidal maniac. And yet, that genocidal maniac solved a problem that your guy couldn't. And voting for him would have put these people in a worse situation. And because they spent so much time judging the people on the other side, they can't deal with that cognitive dissonance. Because it hasn't crossed their minds, but maybe they're the bad guys the entire time. They don't get it.
Yeah.
So... Yeah. Yeah, that's why self-awareness is so important. We could
will meet their criteria. We understand that their criteria is woefully deficient and unserious. Right. I think that their real problem.
Well, when she said whoever hits our criteria we'll have on, I assumed that there was like a minimum sub count, right? Like, you've got to be somebody that's impacting the culture. We're not going to take you with your little 250,000 subs.
Yeah.
That's very nice. Congratulations. But we want people who are going to be thought leaders. On the other side, I don't believe it's possible to be neutral on any topic at all, especially when you're talking about politics. And so you should expect a right side bias if a Republican is in office and a left side bias if there's a Democrat in office. I want to see what those stipulations are, because she said if they meet certain criteria,
what is the criteria?
I think they should be transparent and tell us what is that criteria.
I don't know if they will, though.
Oh, I mean, here's what you usually do. You've got 10 aspects in the criteria, right? And you release 5 of them, right? And if people don't look, the way you could tell is if the practice doesn't fall into one of those 5 categories, you say, okay, well, what was the other process of decisioning here, right? But most people aren't going to do that because this is such a novel thing.
Yeah.
All they need is 1 or 2,
categories of what they're going to be.
1 or 2 token leftists, and they'll be way ahead of all the other people already.
In this election, one of the real problems among the many is the misinformation and disinformation that was disseminated on social media by these influencers and by these...
There it is again. The misinformation and disinformation that's been paired on social media since Elon. We already heard somebody talk about that already. I've been asking people, tell me what misinformation and disinformation got flooded onto Twitter the minute Elon showed up. We saw the stats. As far as right wing or left wing, it's literally 49-49 since Elon showed up.
Okay.
It was completely imbalanced the other way before Elon showed up. That's just a fact. Now, me personally, I don't trust Elon Musk at all. I think that if you're on the right, people on the right should be extremely wary of an extremely powerful, intelligent person being that adjacent to so much power when we never elected him. We never elected him. And Elon has the good fortune of being the he's a white African American. I promise you, if his name was Jaquan Musk, he would not be in this situation because street people on the ground on the right wouldn't allow it. But what this lady's talking about here is just crazy to me. I agree we need to see the stipulations, but why is she's already saying prima facie, oh, it's unserious, it's stupid. You don't even know what the criteria are.
Yeah.
So how can you know that the criteria is stupid or whatever you call it?
It sounds like they just want to make sure that they're the only voices still, like the main medias, because she talked about like everybody else's bias except for the main ones.
Thea, I would say that if you have a sniper group out there and you've got 5 dead babies, literal babies, with rounds in the back of their heads, I would call that an act of terrorism, among a war crime, among other things. So that would be one. I can send you the video. You could see the video yourself of the little 16-year-old boy in his sandals getting shot down in the middle of the street for no fucking reason, calling for his mother. Those are terrorists for sure. We continue.
Podcasters, why are they qualified to sit in front in the White House briefing room and tell America what is going on with the country?
Why was Dylan Mulvaney qualified to sit next to Joe Biden? What the hell did he do to earn that spot, ma'am? But this is, again, the whole elitist thing. We went to college. We got into school on debt for journalism. Therefore, it's only us who should be able to go out there and have these discussions or even have that kind of an access. Good night. Good night.
Traditionally, to become a White House correspondent or to be in that briefing room, you had to have a journalism degree. Yeah. You had to have qualifications. So I guess the rise of mediocrity is here to stay.
No, it's not a rise of mediocrity. It's the downfall of journalism.
Wow. The rise of mediocrity is here to stay. You trying to move the phone a little bit there. The rise of mediocrity is here to stay. So because we didn't get ourselves indebted in the tens of thousands of dollars to these educational institutions, that means those people are mediocre. Okay. I don't know, bro. Man. That sounds kind of classist to me.
We already saw it. Remember that clip where you saw all the news channels saying the same lines?
Oh, yeah.
We're like, okay, is that what your professionalism and your like lack of mediocrity brings you guys to, where you copy what each other says and you follow along with the party lines? That's why we like the independent media. We like the people that can talk from their own living room and they're not getting bought out by anybody else. They're not being told what to say. So mediocrity. I think that the main media has become mediocre, and it's become about lying and about biasing, but having biases and then pushing people in certain directions through those. Like, I used to think that the media only told you what the facts were, and then you decided what you wanted to think about those facts. I can't believe like how biased both sides can be in the media. But I find that so interesting that she's saying mediocrity like that. Yeah, it definitely sounds like...
It's a mask-off moment.
Yeah.
See, this is the thing that gets me, is that... And this is actually where I was really educated by my left-wing friends, because I used to say that, neoliberals, Democrats, and leftists were the same thing. They are not the same thing. Like, no real leftist would ever say something like that. If you're not part of the educational institution, then you're mediocre. But it's really interesting because you heard this over and over again. What was it? It was non-educated college white women, non-educated.
Yeah, they kept saying it over and over.
It was always this little dig, like, yeah, these people are idiots. They're stupid. Yeah. They don't know what's good for them. Blah blah blah. Listen. Your college degree at this moment in time tells us about your socioeconomic strata. It doesn't tell me anything about your competence.
It's so
but it
true.
does tell me where you probably grew up. It does tell me what kind of family you probably had. There are a lot of cultural markers that diploma represents.
Yeah.
And so it's this sort of, there's nobody that came from my background that's going to be able to go to any of these Ivy League, whatever. You have no choice but to be self-made. And so it's like, they talk out of both sides of their mouth here.
Yeah.
What's up, Mr. Pecles? ¿Qué pasó? It blew my mind to find out people actually had alternative facts and not just different opinions presented to them if they watched news from the other side. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. These people are acting like, oh man, you know, like if you didn't go to Yale journalism school, you're not going to be able to tell what happened to Soleimani. We all know what happened to Soleimani. Mm-hmm. Like we don't like. We're in the AI generation now. It's just completely different.
Yeah,
now.
I mean, that's kind of the thing. Like, right? We used to have the scribes. Back in the day, the scribes were trained and they had to write word for word exactly what it was. If you made mistakes, I mean, the whole thing got scrapped and thrown away.
It's true.
Now, it's like, okay, so that's what the level of education did. It was like, you have education, we need perfection from you. And if you cannot write this document perfect, throw it out and start over. It's not like throwing out the piece of paper. The whole scroll gets thrown away and you start over. Now, they're putting out disinformation, they're straight lying to us. All kinds of stuff is going on, but then they're making it seem like you have to be educated to be able to tell us the news. It's like, what do you mean? You have to be educated to what?
Yeah.
Deceive us?
All you guys were educated. You
twist
said me and my friends all over the fucking world with your education.
Right.
What are you talking about? But see, you didn't go anywhere, lady.
Mm-hmm.
Sitting on the couch. You didn't go anywhere. You didn't lose anybody to the lies of this fucking media. So it hits you a little bit different. But to those of us who've lost people, or to those of us who have lost certain kinds of innocence that we'll never get back, it's a little bit different. You put a bunch of 18, 19-year-old boys to a whole bunch of shit for no fucking reason. I'm talking about you, big media, Fox, MSNBC, NBC, CNN. Mm-hmm. If I'd have had, and the only people that were giving a contrary opinion were weirdos at Bates College by themselves. Mm-hmm. Because I was at hey, I don't see it on TV. You're not official. Who are you? You're just some pumpkin. What do you know about it? You're just too scared to fight. Blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. They did that to us. Everybody talking about, like, trying to put the whole war on Bush. Of course, God's going to hold Bush accountable for that. But it was the media. The media that went along with the anthrax scares and all the rest of it. And Muhammad Atta met with Saddam Hussein, blah, 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 blah. What are you talking about? All these people were the ones that lied us all into a war, man. Like, what are we doing here?
Has become propaganda. And that is why, yes, you can have influencers, podcasters, people who are not traditional journalists, because journalism is dead. Journalism is not a real thing anymore, right? Nobody does that. There are very few outlets that do actual journalism. Most of the news that you see is what we call opinion commentary, right? In the sense that you're giving your opinion. Now,
and Alex Jones. Mm-hmm. Now, look, I think Alex Jones is a complete dick for what he did to them people. Those kids that died in the Parkland shooting, he said it was a false flag, all types of shit. These people are burying their kids, all types of shit. Like, he's lucky he didn't die, bro. So fuck Alex Jones for that. But he did tell us about Iraq. And he did say it was on some bullshit. But once again, he was marginalized. He was crazy. And you know what? Alex Jones acts crazy. And to be honest with you, there's still a big part of me that says, okay, somebody got to dude. And he's an asset at some level. He's got to be. But it is a good point. Anybody who spoke out against the Iraq war was either a crazy hippie who was just too pussy to fight, or it was, you know, you're a crazy person off the reservation like Alex, right? Like, and that's how all of the media portrayed it. Every single one of them.
CNN, MSNBC, well, you know, MSNBC is they've gone full mask off. They don't even pretend to do journalism anymore. But you have certain outlets like CNN, ABC, NBC, they pretend to do journalism, but they don't, right? I mean, they're doing opinion commentary, and they'll try to dress it up as much as they can, right, to make it seem like they're doing journalism, but it's not journalism. And this really ratcheted up under the first Trump administration, when these outlets decided that, you know what, neutrality is not worth allowing Trump to win, right? We cannot be neutral and to be journalists as we're covering Trump. And this is something they admitted on MSNBC. They're like, no, we can't play the actual journalist game. We can't play the neutrality game with Trump because they are opposed to him and they can't set aside their politics in order to do what their job is, which is to be journalists. So that has led to the downfall of journalism. It has led to journalism losing credibility. So at this point, if all of those
Anna Kasparian had a good article about this about 10 years ago.
Oh my gosh. Your memory's ridiculous.
Or it was 7 years ago. Let's say it was 7 years ago. And it was essentially something to the effect of, Anna Kasparian does not believe in neutrality. And she was talking about the moral aspect of reporting the news. She was saying, look, when you're in a milquetoast kind of environment, like 90s politics, like politics in the 90s, nothing really severe was happening. We had a surplus going on with Clinton. You can play those kind. You can kind of be just an objective reporter. Hey, Jane Areno did this. Bill Clinton did that. Whatever. But when you're in an emergency, which she characterized the Trump administration as a national emergency, to speak in a completely non-biased, non-emotive way, to her is a moral evil. Because people need to be warned as to how severe the issue is. So, for example, if you were in Nazi Germany right before Kristallnacht, for example, but you had, you were putting the tea leaves together, you don't want to get on TV and be like, well, it looks like the Fuhrer might.
Oh, right, yeah.
Right? Like
yeah,
you would
it
say,
needs to be definitive.
This is happening.
It needs to be a warning, yeah.